your experience now entering into the NCAA bubble for the women's tournament. That was San Antonio, correct?
Yeah, San Antonio.
And then you posted up a famous, I'll include it in the show notes, a photo, a representation of the weight room that y'all had in the San Antonio bubble versus the men's basketball team that they had up in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
What was going through your head for that post? Was that like, oh, should I do this, or this needs to be shown?
Yeah, it was a little bit of everything. So actually what first happened was I had some colleagues who, we all descend on the bubble together, and we're kind of chatting. We're like, hey, has anybody seen this weight room? We'd seen pictures of what the guys had gotten, and none of us had seen it. We'd gotten this email, this very just sort of cryptic email with this ambiguous bulleted list of like the equipment that we were getting in our training facility. And it was like dumbbells and bars and whatever, but none of us had seen it. Right. So we all get there, and a couple of my colleagues trained first. They had one of the first practice slots, and they saw it, and they immediately texted. We had like a little text group, and they're like, yo, you are not going to believe what we have. It is literally a dumbbell tree and some yoga mats. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, nah, like that's like not the main workout. Like that's just like what's next to the court, like that's not the main weight room. So, they start posting about it. And actually a couple of them were told to take their posts down by their institutions, because we're supposed to promote positivity around the tournament, and we're just happy to be here, and blah, blah, blah. We should just be thankful that we even got a tournament this year. So, I'm like, all right, we practiced that afternoon, and I'm talking to my associate head coach as we're walking to practice. And I was like, so apparently this weight facility that we have is like nothing. And I've had a couple colleagues post about it, and they were told to take theirs down. And she's like, oh, well, that's crazy. Stanford would never tell you to take yours down. And I'm like, huh, interesting. So that's like kind of percolating in the back of my mind. And I show up and I see it, and I'm like, oh my God, they weren't lying. Like it was literally a set of dumbbells up to 30 and a stack of like 12 yoga mats. Oh, and like a spin bike that was next to the court. Cause we need a lot of cardio at this point in the season. And I don't know. I don't know really what like spurred it in my mind. Obviously, I'm not like Twitter famous or Insta famous. At the time I had like maybe 1,000 followers, and I took the men's picture and I took the picture of ours and I posted them together, and that was that. I was like, this needs to be said. My other colleagues weren't able to post about it, but I think something should be said. Mm-hmm. And it blew up. It just like absolutely blew up. And I think it was because people had started to hear about it, but they hadn't seen a picture of it yet. And then the picture was like the first of the pictures to kind of go up. And then obviously like Sedona Prince from Oregon kind of took it to TikTok, and I was like, good, like take it, girl. Like you're an athlete, you got a following, like you go, girl. But that's where it started. And it was kind of crazy to see how social media just took off with it.
Yeah. What was the response? Did the NCAA step up and communicate to you guys?
So there were a few responses. Initially, no, there was nothing. And then I think some of the coaches started to chirp up about it. And then we, myself and Molly Benetti, were invited to come onto a Zoom call with the administrators of the NCAA and all the head coaches and talk about the discrepancy in facility. And at that time that we were also discussing things like food and lodging. And, obviously we're not going to be quiet about this, so that other people start posting about it, and it starts becoming obviously a huge deal. So then the NCAA has like their chief medical officer reach out to us, and he's asking, like, well, what would you want? And he tasks myself and a few other strength coaches to come up with like a wish list of like what we would want for them to remedy the situation. So we're like, okay, like, get our heads together, and we're suddenly like texting away on this thread, and we're coming up with an idea. And obviously, like, we're not going to ask for what the guys have. One, we need it like tomorrow. Well, we need it like yesterday, but like we need it tomorrow. So we're not going to ask for a full, like, elaborate setup like they had. But yeah, we came up with that list and we sent it back to them and we got like a response. It was like, noted, thanks. And then, we're kind of getting word that like the NCAA is like working on a solution, but it's like super ambiguous. And we show up, and basically what they had done is they had told us that when we got to the Sweet 16, they were going to make us a bigger setup. So what I think they did, and I don't have obviously like 100% certainty on this, but I think what they did is they just expedited the construction of that Sweet 16 setup. And then they just like put it in a different area. Cause like the claim was that there was no space. There was a lot of space. Yeah, it was disappointing that, obviously we did a lot of work to like try to help. Like we were just like trying to help them with solutions. We like, okay, this happened. This was messed up. How are we going to actually take action on it to get us to be able to train like today? And that just like didn't really come to fruition. And it felt like we were being listened to, but just like very superficially, like, well, we're going to listen to you, but just so that this problem just can kind of leave the news cycle. And yeah, it was, to be honest with you, it was to the point where I was like, okay, I just want to win a game. Like this all happened before we even played our first game. In text, I was like, shit, man. Like, what if we're the first number 1 seed to lose to a 16 seed because we're all distracted and like our girls are, they're coming up to me in the elevator, like, Allie, like you're like going viral, and I'm like, please just focus on basketball.
Yeah. To share with our listeners what happened on the court in the following weeks.
Yeah, we just kept winning. We got exceptionally lucky in the Final Four. We won our last 2 games by a point apiece. But I will go on record saying that I think our experience having to live our first 9 weeks on the road, and then, from there on, anything, the bubble felt short. The 3-week bubble was like nothing. That didn't really affect our girls. So I think by that point we were seasoned and we were ready, and to win, you have to be healthy, you have to be good, and you have to be lucky. And we had a decent dose of each of those by the end.
Yeah. And memories for the young women for a lifetime from the beginning. And that team, maybe this becomes the strategy for your head coach moving out. Like, hey, we're going to move to Vegas. Let's go spend 3 months in Vegas for a little bit, and then we'll come back and kick ass.
Not. Oh man.
Freight train and I'm right on track. I'm smoking.